And also, you created base radius. So I would love to know more about that because this is like with what I've seen, it's like an incredible learning space for kids. But it ended up making you lose $200,000. So what went wrong?
What went wrong? Okay, I actually have written the answers to that. Okay, I'll tell you what. It's called being an idealist, right? I was such an idealist back then. I thought that it's just my way or the highway. And a few of those mistakes that I made. So, for example, everybody said, you got to market your place, you got to tell people about base radius. I'm like, no, no, no. I don't believe in marketing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to teach a couple of kids, and then they're going to enjoy it so much. Their parents are going to be so impressed by the facilities that the word of mouth, the organic growth is going to fuel it. But I'm never going to tell people how good base radius is because I felt at that time that that would be like what's the misleading marketing. If I were to claim base radius is like the best robotics or alternative educational institute in UAE, I don't know that. How do I make that claim? Right. So I never wanted to market. And that was the biggest mistake that I made. So that was one. The second thing was I didn't have like a proper policy in place to receive money from, like from the students. So if parents did not pay me on time or whatever, I kind of ignored it and I let it be. And yeah, so I would kind of like pay things from my pocket. So no bad marketing or no marketing. Again, the other ideology, like the other idealistic thing I had, I don't believe in giving kids like a certificate of merit to say, hey, congratulations, you completed this course. Now you're a robotics expert. And parents, I realized during my 2 year tenure with Base Radius, really wanted those certificates. Like, I think their primary reason for sending their kids to Base Radius was not that the kids are going to enjoy and learn something new. They actually care that, oh, this kid is going to get a certificate that says he completed a robotics course so that they can use that to either probably advance his career or her career or whatever. And I was vehemently against that. So when parents would say, can you give my kid a certificate? I'm like, no, I don't give certificates out. And frankly, they haven't learned enough for me to give a certificate. Let them enjoy the process. And then when it's time for them to kind of like get a certificate, they'll get a certificate. Don't focus on the certificate. And I lost a lot of customers that way, right? And I didn't care because I didn't really keep track of, how much I'm losing in terms of finances till it was too late till I was like, oh, it's $200,000. Oops, and then I had to call it quits. And the other mistake was not to realize that you're sinking soon enough, like because I just kept believing that, oh no, it's gonna pick up, and I had so many offers to kind of like pivot or kind of establish the same thing, but like with another institute that was already established. And I was like, what's your philosophy? How do you guys do things? And if they do things slightly differently than I do, I was like, no, thank you for the offer. I'm just going to keep doing the things I do. Terrible, stupid things I've done. And that's why I lost all that money.
And honestly, that kind of financial loss can literally break a person. So, actually, this is gonna be one of the most important things I need to discuss with you. I personally, okay, so my niche is startups in general. So you're talking to the marketing girlie herself. My niche is really startups. And you can't imagine that most of the time when I speak to founders of startups, they are a lot of them, they're not even keeping track of their finances. So this is one aspect. Second aspect is that the reason they started, sometimes they feel like they need to follow a specific approach, but that approach is not like entirely for them, and they just refuse to change that ideology. So the thing is, and this is going to be one of the most important things as well, specifically for startups, is that any small minor thing that happens with them, automatically they just call it quits. So for example, if they lose $1,000 extra, or for example it's consuming them a little bit of more time than they thought, but literally losing $200,000 and then keep on going, like, all right, how did you mentally like recover from that failure, and how are you still mentally going on to building a lot of more brands?
All right, so it took me 4 years to mentally recover from that. So it was not like, oh, I failed. Hey, listen, read this quote. It says, "Stand up after you fail." Yay! No, it took me 4 years. It took me four. It took me 4 years to firstly recover that the financial loss. Like I literally had to. I was working 16 hours a day. I went back to my job. I was taking side gigs. I would do everything and anything that could make money. But because I had kids, I had a family, I needed to make sure that they survive. So for me, it was like, this is the time to start chipping away at, the big mountain of, shit that I've built, And there was a very good friend of mine. He said that he actually told me. He said, "Listen, man, you've got this big, huge debt pile. If you keep looking at the debt, you know that it's $200,000. You're never going to like recover. What you need to do is just kind of like start chipping away piece by piece, and eventually you're going to realize that you're done." And that's what I did. And I would always like, so my philosophy back then was, I don't come home till I've either sold something, built something for someone, charged someone money, or like done something to chip away at that big pile of debt. Yeah, and sometimes I'd come home early because I've done something. Sometimes I just won't come home till like 2 in the night till I finally did something. But that was the rule. Every day you got to chip something away. And eventually, after 4 years, I was down to zero. Finally, like back from the minus 200K to zero. And that was like, woo, I did it. I was so happy. And then after that, it took me like 6 months of just relaxing. Like I didn't, if people asked me, hey, what are you doing these days? I would say nothing, just nothing. I'm chilling. Leave me alone. It took me 4 years. Leave me, leave me alone. And then after that, I kind of started doing what we're going to talk about now, the true lens and true dogs and all these things.